My sister humiliated me at her wedding. She thanked everyone, then looked at me. Not everyone contributed. My ungrateful brother thought his little garage was more important than family. I just smiled and grabbed the mic. 2 minutes later, everyone knew who paid for her $65,000 party. All right, Reddit, strap in for this incoming shit show. This is the story of how my entitled sister's wedding from hell and how I ended up being the bad guy for not bankrolling her delusions. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. I, 34 male, have been a mechanic for 15 years. Started right out of high school working at my uncle's shop. Learned everything from oil changes to full engine rebuilds. Now I own my own place. A solid neighborhood garage that keeps the lights on and puts food on the table. My sister Andrea, 29 female, is the complete opposite. Picture every entitled princess stereotype rolled into one person who thinks the world owes her a fairy tale. Never worked a real job, bounced between community college and finding herself for a decade, somehow convinced our parents that funding her Instagram lifestyle was an investment. She drives a car I've fixed 50 times because maintenance is optional. Oil changes? Seems excessive. Check engine light? Probably fine. Our parents enabled this shit for years, bailing her out of every financial mess while acting like it was normal parenting. Me? I learned early that nobody owed me shit. Worked through high school, bought my first car from a junkyard with cash, and rebuilt it myself. When I skipped college to be a mechanic, Andrea laughed and said I'd be fixing cars forever like some kind of peasant. Joke's on her. I own my business, my house is paid off, and my retirement account looks pretty good. Meanwhile, she's still living paycheck to paycheck at almost 30, except her paychecks come from our parents. My buddy Corey, who's been watching this family circus for years. He runs the parts store where I get most of my supplies, so he's witnessed Andrea's greatest hits, like the time she tried to return brake pads she'd accidentally ordered, but really just couldn't afford. Your sister's gonna crash and burn one day, Corey told me about 2 years ago while I was picking up spark plugs. And when she does, she's gonna expect you to catch her. Not my problem, I said. I fix cars, not people. Corey just grinned and shook his head. We'll see about that, brother. Turns out Corey's got a crystal ball, because 18 months later, Andrea got engaged to this guy. Brad she'd been dating for like 8 months. Brad's fine, I guess. Works in sales, drives a leased BMW, talks about his personal brand unironically. He's got that eager puppy energy of a guy who thinks Andrea's high-maintenance bullshit is cute instead of exhausting. At the engagement party, Andrea spent the whole night talking about her vision and how this was going to be the wedding of the century. She had a Pinterest board with like 500 pins and kept shoving her phone in people's faces, showing them flower arrangements that cost more than most people's monthly rent. We're thinking destination wedding, she announced to anyone who'd listen. Maybe Napa Valley or the Hamptons. Somewhere elegant and sophisticated. Brad just nodded along like a bobblehead, while mentally calculating how many credit cards he'd need to max out to make this happen. That's when the hints started. Little comments about family contributing to the most important day of their lives. Mentions of how other families come together to make weddings special. The kind of passive-aggressive bullshit Andrea's perfected over the years. I knew exactly where this was heading. The real fun started about 6 months before the wedding date. Andrea called a family meeting at our parents' house to discuss wedding logistics. I showed up straight from work, still in my coveralls with motor oil under my fingernails. Andrea took one look at me and rolled her eyes. Could you maybe have cleaned up first? She said, wrinkling her nose. This is important. What's important is the transmission rebuild I left half-finished to be here, I shot back. So let's make this quick. She laid out her vision like she was presenting a business plan to investors. Every detail had been researched. Every vendor had been contacted. Every expense had been calculated down to the last dollar. The presentation was actually impressive, if you ignored the part where none of it was remotely affordable. Venue, exclusive vineyard, $15,000 rental fee. Catering, farm-to-table organic menu, $200 per plate for 150 guests. Flowers, $8,000. Photography, $5,000. Dress, custom designer gown from some boutique in the city, $3,000. Music, live band instead of a DJ, $4,000. I'm doing the math in my head while she's talking, and we're already at like $65,000. Most people don't spend that much on a car. So, Andrea said with that smile, we're hoping family can help make this dream come true. How much help? Dad asked, and I could already see him mentally accessing their retirement savings. Well, Brad's parents are covering the venue and catering. We thought maybe our family could handle the flowers, photography, and music. It's really not that much when you think about how special this day is. $17,000. Mom looked excited, already caught up in the romance of it all. Dad looked nervous, probably running calculations on what this would do to their retirement plans. I looked at Corey, who'd come with me because he knew this was going to be entertaining as hell. That's a lot of money, Andrea, Dad said carefully, trying to be diplomatic. It's an investment in my happiness, she replied, without missing a beat. And honestly, I thought my own family would want to support me on the most important day of my life. And what's your budget for this wedding? I asked, cutting through the bullshit. Why does that matter? Because if you're asking for 17 grand, I want to know what you and Brad are contributing to your own party. Brad and I are young and just starting out. Family is supposed to help with weddings. It's tradition. Tradition is the bride's family paying for the wedding, Corey said helpfully. And last I checked, that would be your parents, not your brother. Andrea shot him a look that could melt steel. This is a family discussion. Corey's family, I said. What are you two contributing? Dad asked, trying to redirect the conversation back to actual logistics. We're paying for our honeymoon and the rings and Brad's tux. That's already like $8,000. $8,000 for their share of a $65,000 wedding. But somehow the family should cover the other $57,000. The math was ridiculous. That's when I started laughing. Couldn't help it. The sheer balls of this woman to ask for more money than most people make in 6 months so she could play princess for a day. Something funny, Dylan? Andrea asked, getting that edge in her voice. Yeah, actually. You want us to pay more for your flowers than I paid for my entire truck. Your truck is disgusting. My truck is paid for. With my own money. Revolutionary concept. Mom jumped in with the peacekeeping routine. Let's all just think about it and talk more later. But Andrea wasn't done. She pulled out her phone and started showing pictures of other weddings, swiping through image after image of Pinterest-perfect celebrations. Look at these. This is what I'm trying to create. This is my vision. Very nice, I said. What's the backup plan if nobody can afford to fund your vision? There is no backup plan. This is my wedding, and it's going to happen as I want. Right. Then you should pay for it. That's when she lost it completely. Are you freaking kidding me? Started crying, talking about how I'd always been jealous of her, how I never supported her dreams, how family is supposed to stick together. The whole performance, complete with mascara tears and dramatic gestures. Brad sat there looking uncomfortable as hell. Dude was getting a preview of his future anytime Andrea didn't get her way. I stood up. Corey, we're leaving. Already? But this was just getting good, Corey said, grinning. Dylan, please don't leave like this, Mom said, trying to smooth things over. I'm not funding Andrea's fantasy. If that makes me the asshole, I can live with it. Andrea looked up from her tears. You're really going to ruin my wedding? I'm not ruining anything. I'm just not paying for it. And that's when she said the words that would come back to haunt her later. You're just bitter, because you'll never have anything this nice in your pathetic little life. Corey whistled low. Damn, princess. That was cold. I looked at Andrea for a long moment. 29 years old and still thinking the world owed her everything she wanted. We'll see about that, I said, and walked out. Corey followed me to my truck. You know she's going to make your life hell until this wedding's over, right? Let her try. What followed was basically psychological warfare, except I was fighting someone who'd been perfecting manipulation tactics since childhood. Andrea didn't just ask for money. She launched a full-scale campaign designed to make me feel like the worst brother in human history. It started with the phone calls. She would call Mom crying about how stressed she was, how her wedding was falling apart, how her own brother didn't care about her happiness. Mom would call me 5 minutes later, suggesting maybe I could help out a little since family is so important. She's just so upset, Dylan. This wedding means everything to her. Don't be harsh. Not my problem. Then came the social media blitz. Andrea started posting on Facebook about how wedding planning was so stressful when you don't have support from the people who matter most. Real subtle stuff. Pictures of her looking exhausted with captions about feeling let down by family. Her friends would comment with hearts and "you deserve the world" messages. A few relatives started liking posts that were obviously aimed at making me look like a selfish prick. The passive-aggressive posting was impressive. Nothing directly called me out, but anyone who knew the family drama could read between the lines. Andrea was crowdsourcing sympathy while making me look like the villain. Dad tried a different approach. He cornered me at Corey's parts store one afternoon while I was picking up brake pads. Your mother's really upset about this situation with Andrea, he said, keeping his voice low. What situation? Andrea demanding 17 grand she hasn't earned? It's just, She's our little girl, and this wedding means everything to her. Dad's old school, family first, take care of your own, all that traditional stuff. But he's also practical enough to know that $17,000 is serious money for people living on retirement income. Dad, if you and Mom want to help her, that's your choice. But I'm not opening my wallet because Princess decided she needs a magazine wedding. She's not asking for much. She's asking for a down payment on a house. He didn't have an answer for that. Just stood there looking uncomfortable. Corey was watching this whole conversation while trying not to laugh. After Dad left, he came over shaking his head. Your family's got some serious boundary issues. Tell me about it. Andrea's gonna escalate. You know that, right? This guilt trip campaign is just the opening act. He was right, of course. A week later, Andrea showed up at my shop during lunch. Just walked right into the garage bay where I was working on a transmission rebuild, wearing white jeans and heels like she was going to a photo shoot. We need to talk, she said, carefully avoiding the oil stains on the concrete floor. I'm working. This will just take a minute. I wiped my hands on a rag and looked at her, standing in my garage looking completely out of place, like a cat in a dog show. What do you want, Andrea? I want to understand why you're trying to sabotage my wedding. I'm just not paying for it. Am I not being clear here? Do you have any idea how much this means to me? Do you have any idea how much 17 grand means to someone who actually works for their money? She looked around the garage with this expression like she was touring a disaster zone. The disdain was written all over her face. Is this really how you want to spend your life? Working on other people's broken cars? Yes. But don't you want more than this? That's when I realized the fundamental problem between us. She thought success meant spending money you didn't have on shit you didn't need to impress people you didn't like. I thought success meant owning your own business, paying your bills, and not depending on other people to fund your fantasies. I have everything I want, I told her. This is pathetic. You're 34 years old, and you're still playing with cars like a little boy. And you're 29, and still expecting other people to pay for your toys. She started the crying routine again, switching tactics when the insults didn't work. I just want one perfect day. One day where everything is beautiful and special and magical. Is that too much to ask? Number. But it's too much to demand from other people's bank accounts. I'm not demanding anything. Really? What happens if I don't give you the money? Then my wedding will be ruined and it'll be your fault. Sounds like a demand to me. Look, I said, trying to end this conversation. If you want to have a wedding, but have one you can afford. You don't understand. This isn't just any wedding. This is my dream. They're not other people's responsibility. She left without a word, but I knew the war was just getting started. That weekend, she organized a family dinner at our parents' house. Everybody was there. Our aunts, uncles, cousins, even our grandmother who usually avoided family drama. Real power move, bringing in the extended family for backup. One by one, relatives started mentioning how important it is to support family and how weddings are once-in-a-lifetime events. Andrea sat there soaking it up like she was receiving an award for being the most wronged person in family history. My cousin Lily actually said, "Come on, Dylan. It's just money." Just money? When's the last time you had 17 grand lying around? That's not the point. That's exactly the point. My grandmother, bless her heart, tried a different approach. Dylan, dear, family is the most important thing in life. We take care of each other. I agree, Grandma, but taking care of each other doesn't mean funding someone's fantasy party. Andrea jumped in. It's not a fantasy. It's my wedding. Same thing, apparently. That's when my Aunt Laura suggested they all pitch in to help cover the costs. If everyone contributes a little, it won't be such a burden on any one person. Brilliant. Now Andrea had figured out how to crowdfund her wedding, using family guilt. I watched her face light up as she realized she'd found her solution. That's a wonderful idea, Andrea said. If everyone could just contribute what they're comfortable with. I stood up. Good luck with that. I'm out. Where are you going? Mom asked. Home. I've got a transmission to finish rebuilding. Andrea's voice followed me to the door. Screw you, Dylan. You ungrateful little... Bye, I said, shutting the door behind me. Her next move was so over the top that even I had to admire the sheer audacity. She decided to go public with our family drama by posting a detailed Facebook rant about how her brother was too selfish to help with her wedding and how it was breaking her heart that family couldn't come together for something so important. She had positioned herself as the victim and me as the villain, and apparently half the town bought into her narrative. The campaign was working too. My aunts had already contributed a few hundred each. My uncle offered to pay for the flowers. Even my grandmother sent Andrea a check for $500, which probably hurt her Social Security budget, but made her feel like she was contributing to something special. But Andrea wanted more than community fundraising. She wanted the full 17 grand from me specifically, probably because it would prove she could manipulate her big brother into compliance. That's when she played her nuclear card. She called me on a Tuesday night while I was watching the game, probably timing it for maximum emotional impact. She was crying before I even said hello. "Dylan, I need to tell you something." "What now?" "I'm pregnant." I muted the TV and tried to process what she'd just said. "Congratulations, I guess." "You don't understand. The wedding dress I ordered, it's not going to fit. I need to get it altered or order a new one. Everything's falling apart." More crying. "What does this have to do with me? I need the wedding to happen before I start showing, which means everything has to be perfect, because this might be the only wedding photos I ever get where I look the way I dreamed." The manipulation was reaching new levels of creativity. Now she was using her unborn child as leverage. "So you're saying you need 17 grand because you're pregnant?" "I'm saying I need my family's support during the most stressful time of my life. I'm scared the wedding won't happen. I'm scared Brad will realize how expensive everything is and call it off." Part of me almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered this was the same person who'd called my life pathetic and my career a joke. "Andrea, Brad's not calling off the wedding because of money, and you can have a perfectly nice wedding without 17 grand. You don't understand. This isn't just about the wedding anymore. This is about starting my marriage and family and..." "Right, and that means other people pay for it." "That's not what this is about." "What is it about then?" Long pause. Then, "I just want to feel special. One day where everything is perfect and beautiful, and I'm the center of attention and everyone's happy for me. Is that so wrong?" And there it was. "Then save up for it. Get a job, make a budget, plan a wedding you can afford." The crying stopped. Her voice got cold, all the vulnerability disappearing in an instant. "Fine. I was hoping my brother would care enough to help me start my married life the right way. But I guess I was wrong about you. Guess so. Don't expect me to invite you to anything else. No baby shower, no christening, no family events. If you can't be there for the important stuff, you're not really family." "Oh no, I'm upset." "Screw you!" Then she hung up. I sat there for a minute, then called Corey. "She played the pregnancy card," I told him. "Of course she did." "What's next? Threatening to elope?" "She threatened to cut me out of the family." "Even better. So now you don't have to buy Christmas presents." The day of Andrea's wedding arrived exactly as expected. Overpriced, overdramatic, and over the top in every possible way. Despite all her financial maneuvering, she'd managed to pull together most of her dream wedding by squeezing money out of every relative who couldn't say no to her tears. I showed up wearing my best suit. Corey came with me as my plus one, mostly because he'd invested too much time watching this shit show to miss the finale. The venue was everything Andrea had promised. Rolling vineyards, perfect lighting, Instagram-worthy backgrounds everywhere you looked. Andrea looked beautiful, I'll give her that. For about 3 hours, she actually looked genuinely happy instead of just performing happiness for social media. Then came the reception, and that's where the wheels started falling off the wagon. Andrea had hired some indie folk group that looked like they'd rather be playing in a coffee shop than at a wedding. But they were expensive, so she was determined to get her money's worth even if they clearly didn't want to be there. The second sign was when the photographer started asking about overtime fees. Apparently, Andrea's package only covered 6 hours, but her timeline was running long because she insisted on taking photos in every corner of the vineyard. The photographer was being professional about it, but you could tell he was calculating hourly rates while Andrea posed. But the real disaster started during dinner. She had insisted on a 4-course plated meal instead of a buffet, because it was more elegant. What she hadn't counted on was that the catering staff was apparently running their first wedding ever. The first course took an hour to serve. The second course was lukewarm when it finally arrived. By the time the third course showed up, people were drunk and restless and starting to complain loudly. Corey leaned over to me during the endless wait between courses. "This is painful to watch. It gets worse. Check out Table 6. Table 6 was where our relatives were sitting, the ones who'd contributed money to make this wedding happen. They were exchanging looks that said they were wondering where their money had gone, because it sure as hell wasn't going toward competent service. Andrea was running around trying to fix everything, which meant she barely ate dinner at her own wedding. Brad was following her around trying to calm her down, which meant he barely ate either. The bride and groom were stressed, the guests were hungry and drunk, and the whole carefully planned timeline was falling apart in real time. But the nuclear meltdown happened during the speeches, and that's where this story takes a very satisfying turn. Andrea had given everyone who contributed money to the wedding a special thank you in the program. Our parents, aunts, uncles, even our grandmother got mentioned by name for their generous support. Everyone except me, of course. When it came time for family toasts, she took the microphone and gave this beautiful speech about family and love and how grateful she was for everyone who helped make her dream come true. She thanked people by name, got emotional talking about how much their support meant to her, and generally made everyone feel like they'd participated in something special. Then she looked directly at me. Of course, not everyone in our family was able to contribute, but we understand that people have different priorities, and we're just grateful that everyone could be here to celebrate with us. I could feel people looking at me, probably wondering what kind of asshole brother doesn't help with his sister's wedding. Andrea grinned like she'd just won a chess match. That's when I realized I was done playing defense. I stood up, grabbed my drink, and walked over to the microphone. Mind if I say a few words? Andrea's smile faltered. Actually, we're running behind schedule. This'll just take a minute. I took the microphone and looked out at the crowd. First, congratulations to Andrea and Brad. This is obviously a beautiful wedding, and I hope you're both very happy. Polite applause. I also want to acknowledge everyone who contributed to making this day possible. I know Andrea's already thanked you, but I don't think everyone understands exactly how much this celebration cost. Andrea's face went white. Brad started moving toward me, but Corey intercepted him with a friendly hand on the shoulder. The venue rental alone was $15,000. The catering was $30,000. The flowers were $8,000. The photographer was $5,000. The band was $4,000. All told, this one-day party cost about $65,000. You could hear a pin drop. People started doing math in their heads, realizing exactly how much money they were sitting in the middle of. Now, Andrea and Brad contributed about $8,000 of their own money to their wedding. Everyone else, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, family friends, you covered the other $57,000. Murmurs started rippling through the crowd. Andrea was frantically trying to get the microphone back, but I wasn't done yet. So when Andrea says she's grateful for your support, she means she's grateful you paid for her party. When she thanks you for making her dreams come true, she means she's grateful you opened your wallet so she didn't have to. That's enough, Andrea hissed. And when she mentions that not everyone was able to contribute, she's talking about me, because I had the audacity to suggest that maybe, just maybe, the bride and groom should pay for their own wedding. I handed her the microphone and went back to my table. The reception continued, but the mood had shifted completely. People were looking around with new eyes, probably wondering if they'd been played. Andrea managed to salvage the rest of the evening, but the damage was done. Her perfect wedding had been revealed as an expensive party funded by family guilt and emotional manipulation. Instead of feeling special, she probably felt exposed. Corey and I left during the cake cutting. We had work in the morning, and I'd seen enough. That was brutal, Corey said as we walked to the truck. That was honest. Same thing, in your family. We drove home in comfortable silence. I'd burned some bridges that night, but they were bridges I didn't mind losing. Sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes it's supposed to. Andrea had gotten her dream wedding, and everyone who paid for it now knew exactly what they'd bought. The fallout from my wedding speech was immediate and comprehensive. By the time Corey and I got home, my phone was already blowing up with texts from relatives ranging from, "That was completely inappropriate," to "Someone needed to say it." Andrea didn't speak to me for 3 months. Neither did my parents. Christmas was awkward as hell, with everyone pretending I didn't exist while discussing Andrea's pregnancy and Brad's promotion and literally anything that didn't involve me. My Uncle Rick cornered me at the family Christmas party. "You really embarrassed your sister at her own wedding?" I told the truth at her own wedding. Same thing, apparently. Andrea had embraced the victim role with both hands. According to family gossip, I'd ruined the most important day of her life out of jealousy and spite. She told anyone who'd listen that she'd tried to include me in the wedding planning, but I'd been bitter and unsupportive from the beginning. The pregnancy became her shield against any criticism. I was pregnant and stressed, and my own brother attacked me at my wedding, was her go-to explanation for why my speech was so horrifying. Never mind that she'd been the one demanding money and manipulating family members for months. Corey found the whole thing hilarious. "You've become the family villain. How does it feel?" Well, better than being the family ATM. The real kick in the teeth came 6 months later when Andrea had the baby. A little girl they named Olivia. Beautiful kid. And Andrea was actually a pretty good mom once she focused on something other than herself. Of course, I wasn't invited to the baby shower, or the christening, or the first birthday party. Andrea had made good on her threat to cut me out of family events, and our parents were backing her play because they didn't want to deal with her tantrums. Corey tried to cheer me up. "Look at it this way. No more awkward family dinners where everyone expects you to fund Andrea's latest scheme. Yeah, but I'm missing out on watching my niece grow up. That's on Andrea, not you. He was right, but principles are expensive when they start costing you relationships. Meanwhile, Andrea and Brad seem to be doing fine from the outside. Brad got promoted at work, they bought a nice house in the suburbs, and Andrea finally got a part-time job doing social media for a local boutique. From their Facebook posts, it looked like they'd figured everything out and were living their best life. But Corey, who hears all the local gossip through his parts store, started picking up interesting information about their finances. Small-town mechanics hear everything because everyone needs their car fixed eventually. Word is they're maxed out on credit cards, he told me one afternoon while I was waiting for brake rotors to be delivered. That's not surprising. You can't throw a 65 grand party and expect your budget to recover overnight. It's worse than that. Apparently, Brad's been taking cash advances to make minimum payments, and Andrea's job isn't exactly bringing in serious money. Still not my problem. Speaking of problems, Corey grinned, your sister's car broke down last week. Brad came in asking for brake pads and a starter motor. I told him we were all out and he'd have to try the dealership. Were you actually out? Nope, but I've got a strict no parts for princess policy now. Let her pay dealership prices for being a manipulative bitch. I couldn't help but laugh. Corey holding a grudge through automotive parts was peak petty, and Brad probably paid triple what it should have cost. The call came on a Thursday evening in March, almost 2 years after the wedding. I was working late in the shop, trying to finish a clutch replacement before the customer picked up his car in the morning. It was my dad. Dylan, we need to talk. About what? Andrea and Brad are in trouble. Real trouble. I put down my wrench and gave him my full attention. What kind of trouble? They're behind on their mortgage, maxed out on credit cards, and Brad's been borrowing money from his 401k to cover bills. They need help. That's unfortunate, I said. Dylan, they're going to lose the house. And with a 2-year-old? Dad, this isn't my problem. She's your sister. She's also an adult who made adult decisions. If those decisions were bad ones, that's on her. You're really going to let your niece end up homeless? Olivia's not going to be homeless. Worst case, they move in with Brad's parents or get a cheaper apartment. People downsize all the time. Your mother and I talked about it. We're willing to help, but we can't cover everything. Andrea said if you could contribute $15,000, that would get them current on everything and give them breathing room to figure things out. $15,000. Again, close to what Andrea had originally wanted for her wedding. The irony was perfect. Let me guess. Andrea suggested I should be the one to provide that 15 grand. She said you were the only one in the family with that kind of liquid assets. Of course she did. Andrea had spent 2 years keeping me away from family events, and now she wanted access to my bank account. Dad, she made a choice at her wedding to publicly embarrass me in front of the whole family. She chose to cut me off. She doesn't get to come back now asking for money. That's all in the past. This is about family helping family. Family helps family. Andrea helps Andrea. So you're saying no? I'm saying hell no. I hung up and went back to work on the clutch, but I couldn't concentrate. Part of me felt bad for Olivia, who didn't deserve to suffer because her parents were financially irresponsible. Part of me felt vindicated that Andrea's lifestyle had finally caught up with her. Mostly, I just felt tired of Andrea's drama affecting my life. Corey found me at the shop an hour later, stress drinking and staring at the half-finished clutch job. Let me guess. Princess needs a bailout. 15 grand, and they expect you to provide it? Who else? I'm the only one dumb enough to have money saved up instead of spending it on dream weddings. So what are you gonna do? I looked at him. What do you think I should do? I think you should stick to your principles. But I also think you should be prepared for your family to hate you even more than they already do. They'll get over it. Will they? That was the question that kept me up that night. How much family was I willing to lose to prove a point about personal responsibility? Well, I was about to find out. The next few weeks were a masterclass in family manipulation. Every relative I had called to discuss the situation with Andrea and Brad. My phone rang constantly with people explaining how I was the only one who could help, how family is supposed to stick together, how I was being selfish and cruel. Andrea herself showed up at my shop 3 weeks after Dad's call. She brought Olivia with her, which was obviously a calculated move designed to make me feel like a monster for refusing to help my adorable niece. We need to talk, she said, standing in my garage holding a gorgeous 2-year-old. I'm working. This will just take a minute. I wiped my hands and looked at her. She looked tired, older, worn down in a way I'd never seen before. The stress of financial problems was written all over her face, and for the first time in her life, she couldn't hide behind makeup and Instagram filters. What do you want, Andrea? I want to apologize for everything. I was wrong. She paused. And I was hoping maybe you could help us get back on our feet. How much debt are you carrying? Including the mortgage, about 80,000. What's your household income? About 80 total. So you owe exactly what you make in a year. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You spent money you didn't have, and now you want me to fix it. Andrea bounced Olivia, playing up the struggling mother. Dylan, please, if we lose the house, you'll find somewhere else to live. You're really going to let your niece suffer because you're too stubborn to help family. I'm going to let you handle the consequences of your own choices. I just wanted Olivia to grow up with nice things. I wanted to give her everything I didn't have. Andrea, you grew up with everything. Mom and Dad gave you everything. That's different. How? Because they could afford it. And you can't. That's the point. So you're just going to watch us crash and burn? I'm going to watch you learn from your mistakes. Andrea left without saying goodbye. But she wasn't done fighting yet. 2 days later, she posted a long Facebook rant about family loyalty and how some people care more about money than blood. She didn't mention my name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. The comments section filled up with people calling me heartless and selfish. That's when I decided to stop playing defense and go nuclear. I wrote my own Facebook post, a long, detailed explanation of exactly what had happened over the past 3 years. The family pressure, the manipulation tactics, the current debt situation. I laid out every number, every conversation, every guilt trip. But I also included financial records, screenshots of Andrea's Venmo request to our parents, photos of her Instagram posts showing expensive dinners and shopping trips while claiming to be broke, bank records showing the $65,000 wedding expenses compared to their $8,000 contribution. I titled it, A Case Study in Financial Irresponsibility and Family Manipulation. The post went viral in our small town. Actually viral this time. Radio DJs talked about it. It became a whole thing about family drama and financial boundaries. Andrea tried to take down the post by reporting it, but screenshots were everywhere. The best part? Other people started sharing their own stories about Andrea hitting them up for money. Turns out she'd been running a side hustle, asking friends and distant relatives for loans to help with Olivia's expenses. My cousin Lily revealed Andrea had borrowed $2,000 for emergency medical bills that turned out to be a weekend trip to Napa Valley. Within a week, Andrea's reputation was completely destroyed. Everyone knew she was a financial predator who used family guilt to fund her lifestyle. The social shame was devastating and immediate. But the real kicker came 2 months later. Andrea and Brad declared bankruptcy, lost the house, cars got repossessed, had to move in with Brad's parents. Andrea lost her job because the social media scandal made her unemployable in our small town. They ended up leaving town completely, moved 3 states away to start over where nobody knew their story. Right before they left, Andrea called me one last time. I hope you're happy. I'm satisfied. You destroyed my life. Nah, I just documented it. She hung up. Corey found me at the shop the next day. Heard Princess skipped town. Yep, took her whole circus with her. So what are you going to do with all that money you didn't give her? I looked at the new truck I just bought. Paid cash because that's what you can do when you don't fund other people's fantasies. Already did it. Andrea got exactly what she deserved. And I got exactly what I earned.